Right, we're now live.
Good morning and welcome to this morning's meeting of the Strategic Licensing Committee. I am Councillor Keith Roberts, Chair of the committee. I'm obliged to inform you that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Members of the public will be able to hear the audio of the meeting and view the paper shown on the screen. This meeting is being held using remote technology, and should any committee members experience technical difficulties during the meeting, they should immediately contact the designated IT officer on the number they have already been supplied with. Everyone is requested to mute their microphones unless asked to speak. Please only use the chat function to indicate the desire to speak. Do not use it for anything else, so that it is clear who is asking to speak and the debate has to be heard by those listening to the audio feed. As Chair, I will interpret the Council's existing standing orders in light of the requirements of remote participation, with advice from the monitoring officer prior to making a ruling. At the start of the meeting, I will ask members of the committee to confirm their presence and any disclosable peculiar interest they have in any of the items on the agenda. I will ask everyone that speaks during the meeting, including members of the committee and officers, to introduce themselves each time before they speak. This is so those listening know who is speaking. Members are reminded to disclose the roll call and disclosable interests. Members are reminded to disclose any peculiar interest in any matters to be discussed, which is not included in the register of interests, and leave the meeting prior to the matter being discussed. I will now read out the names of each member and ask them to confirm their presence and confirm if they have any interests. I'm present as Chair and I have no interests. Roy Allcroft?
Yeah, present, Chair, and no peculiar interests.
Thank you. Nigel Harting?
Yes, present, Chair, and no interests.
Thank you. I've had apologies from Kevin Pardy. David Tremelian?
Present, no interest.
Thank you. Simon Jones?
Present and no pecuniary interests.
Thank you. Claire Aspinall? Not heard anything from Claire. Paul Milner?
Present, Chair, no pecuniary interests. Thank you.
Thank you. Vivian Parry?
Yes, present and no interest.
Thank you. Les Winwood, I've had apologies from. Peter Adams?
Present, no interests.
Pam Mosley?
Thank you, Chair. Present and no interest. And may I add that I will have to leave around 12 o'clock if the meeting is unfinished, unfortunately, due to an appointment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Robert Tyndall, we've had apologies given by Robert. I shall now turn to the items on the agenda.
Chair, it's Councillor Nick Hignett here, Lay Valley Ward.
Right.
Not sure if my reply went through, but I did send it again this morning, but I am present in attendance with no pecuniary interests.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for telling me you're there, Nick. Thanks very much. Right, I shall now go to the agenda. And number one is obviously apologies, which I've already mentioned the three that we've received. Tim, we've got nothing else from Councillor Aspinall?
Chair, nothing from Councillor Aspinall, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Minutes, we're now going to item 2, minutes of the previous meeting, which was held on the 15th of July. Everybody looked at that?
Yeah, it's Councillor Jones here. Yeah, I'm happy to move that we accept those minutes.
All right, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm happy to second.
Roy Allcroft, I'll second.
Sorry, who's that? Roy Allcroft?
That's correct. Roy Allcroft, and I'll second. Okay.
Okay, thank you. now move on then to number 3, public question times. There are no public questions. We've already dealt with number 4, which is the discriminatory peculiar interests. And now we'll go on to the first main item of number 5, which is licensing fees and charges, and over to Mandy Beaver.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mandy.
Okay, so the licensing fees and charges comes to this meeting every year. It's a mammoth amount of work that we do in order to set the fees from the 1st of April 2021 onwards. There's a lot of information in this report, but it's fees for all licensing. There are statutory fees in there that we can't do anything about, but I include those in the report. And there are just discretionary fees in there that what I do is actually use the officer time, heating, lighting, water, administration costs in order to calculate how much those fees are going to be going forward. Just one thing to bear in mind this year, the pandemic has caused a massive amount of reduction in trade generally, for whether that's premises licenses, whether that's taxis, and we've bared that in mind because we don't know how long this pandemic is going to last. So we have tried to keep the fees to the minimum amount possible, and tried not to, where we can make savings anywhere, we've tried not to increase them in anywhere that we've managed to be able to cost neutral them at that point. So the fees are there, the lists are there. I know you would have all had a look at those. The body of the report points out any specific ones that I've highlighted there that I think that you needed to be highlighted as a increase. For example, the novelty vehicles, that one's now been brought in line with the rest of the types of private hire vehicles, but it is the only one in the taxi list that's actually increased. And we have a very few amount of those, so in terms of across the board there's only a handful of those vehicles out there. And I suppose the public health ones are the other ones really I want to bring to your attention, because they have increased, but bearing in mind on the public health ones, this is a single license that they pay for at the start of their business, and it is indefinite. So for example, a tattooist can open a tattooist shop, pay for their license, and they can have that license then indefinitely. There's no recovery of costs going forward. It is a one-off fee. So yes, they have increased, but that's how much it costs. There's a lot of inspections and things involved with those particular premises ongoing, and actually in order to issue the license and check the premises, there's a lot of work that goes into from a health and safety point of view to actually get those licenses in the first place. So I'm really open to questions about the information that's held in there. If anybody has got any concerns or anything they want to ask me about the information that's held, there's a lot of documents in there, so just bear with me. If you can tell me which appendices it is that you're referring to, then I can open it up and then everyone can be looking at the same query, if that's okay. So over to you.
Thank you, Mandy. I will now ask members of the committee for their comments. Please indicate on the chat function if you wish to speak. Please remember that when asked to speak, members should unmute microphone, state their name, and remute on completion. I've got nothing on chat. Oh yes, I have. Councillor Allcroft, you're number 1 then. Off you go.
Yeah, it's one query and another on the charges on pay. I'll start with page 35, street trading consents. Yeah.
Go on.
I'm conscious that we will be holding in Market Drayton here probably a Christmas market involving about 20 odd stalls, Mandy. And we're a bit concerned because what we've been told is that each of those stalls, for the one day that this event is going to go on for, will have to pay £173, which means there's nearly £3,400 to be paid collectively from all of them if the charges shown on page 35 are applied. Is there any chance of having a daily charge rather than giving the 7-day charge to everybody across the blanket? In other words, if we're only having 2 little markets in a year, can we have a charge per stall at a reduced rate, a daily rate, taking account of the £173, or if we are having a 20-25 stall market, could we have a charge of maybe £1,000 for a one-off license to cover that, to cover all those stalls? That's question number 1. I've got another one, but this is the most important one for us because we're having some confused conversations with licensing at the moment as to what charges apply. Thanks, Mandy.
Right.
Okay, so with that, there's 2 things here. One is specific to the report and the other bit is sort of general information. So if I can just address the general information first. The street trading policy was consulted on widely with all the town and parish councils, and information was put in there in respect of the charging and what was included on all of the streets and whether they would be and wouldn't be charged. Last year, bearing in mind sort of Christmas time last year, we were getting the similar sort of queries of what you've just raised now. Francis Darling started a project specifically to do with the Christmas markets about a separate charging regime for those, and also she did some consultation. I know Bridge North was one local authority that raised some queries about the street trading element in the Christmas markets, about how they could resolve this and not have a set fee and not have the street trading policy applied to them because it was a specific market. That project was started, but unfortunately the pandemic then stepped in, and I know it's there in the background, but it hasn't moved forward. But I'm fully aware that Francis is talking to town councils that are trying to have the Christmas markets, if the markets are still going ahead, because some aren't, about this Christmas and this year. So if we can deal with market trading, Christmas market is a separate matter, because street trading in general is the fees set here are to cover the whole of the county, which was in line with the street trading policy. But I'm totally aware that the Christmas markets are a separate entity and further work needs to be done with that on an individual basis, and it includes the fees for that and how that's going to work going forward. But it is a separate thing. The charge that's in this list is for general street trading, for your burger vans that's on the lay-bys on the side of the road, you know, and that sort of thing, rather than it being specific to the Christmas market. It's just unfortunate that what's happened over the last few months, that project, we were hoping to make sure that that was completed in its entirety, ready for this Christmas and for all the markets and stuff that were going ahead. It's just unfortunate we just haven't been able to do that. Does that answer your query?
Right, yeah, it does. Obviously we need to get in touch because we're getting very close to Christmas again and we still haven't resolved the situation, so we'll be in touch on that one. Second thing is I'm conscious that we mentioned tattooists, etc. in the charges that we have, but I'm surprised that on-street podiatry and foot care doesn't come into the licensing and inspection criteria that we have. I realise it may be guided by government rules, but I am aware that in a lot of cases, I mean, I was a podiatrist for 25 years and I never saw a council official, and nobody came to inspect the fact that I was operating to the standards required. And yet podiatrists and foot health practitioners are allowed basically to do minor operations. It seems silly that You know, somebody who's just doing nails has got to go through the routine of having extractor fans and all the rest of it for all good reasons, and is expected to have an inspection every now and again, whereas somebody like a podiatrist or a foot health practitioner can carry out surgery without any inspections at all. Anyway, that's just a point I wanted to make, so maybe next year we'll pop them on the list.
If I can just come in and just give you a response to that one, because I do have a bit of information. There's a number of things, like the examples that you've given, are not covered under licensing legislation currently. Central government did have a project team this time last year that were looking at merging all of those different types of I mean, there is a massive amount of things, vampire facials, there's all sorts of things that just aren't included under licensing legislation at the moment, and they're new and modern things, a lot of these treatments that people have, and they've come about over the last sort of 5 to 10 years, a lot of them. So it's been recognised by central government, and what they were looking at was the whole different range of treatments outside of sort of the NHS world, that of these private sort of practices that are out there, and how that can be managed through a licensing regime. And what they were looking at was overturning all of the legislations to do with tattooist electrolysis, all of that sort of thing, and incorporating all the others and doing a brand new piece of legislation that covers everything across the board. We're just waiting for that legislation to come in, but again, it's just been put on hold, but we know it's being worked on, and all of that other stuff that you've highlighted now will be incorporated with that. That is the intention of central government, and we're just waiting for that to happen.
Thanks, Mandy. That answers my 2 questions. Thank you very much indeed.
Okay.
Thank you, Mandy, for that. Louise Prince, you've asked to speak.
It's okay, Chair. Mandy's dealt with that. I just wanted to make sure that Councillor Royal-Croft's question was a general question, not specifically in relation to Market Drayton.
The second, sorry, yeah, sorry, Louise. The second question was a general question across the board, which I realised.
It was your question in relation to the market fees and charges. It was sounding like it was very specific to Market Drayton, and obviously the fees and charges are a general matter. That's fine, but Mandy's dealt with it.
Yeah, thank you.
I've got nobody else on the chat section. Anybody else wants to speak?
Yes. Sorry, not working.
Sorry, who's saying it?
Viv
Who
Parry.
is it?
Viv Parry.
Go on then, Councillor Parry, go on then.
Just a quick one. Are skip hire places, are they charged for doing skip hire? That's one of the things. Doesn't seem to be on this list. And the other thing is, I believe you've been having problems with street trading. You know that Ludlow do their own street trading. I wonder what sort of problems that you've been having, and have you passed this on to our town clerk? Thank you.
Okay, so first of all, the skip is not the skip hiring is not the responsibility. It's not licensed by us. It's licensed by the environmental, can't remember the exact word, but it's not us. It's a different local government organisation that are responsible for anything to do with skips and skip hire, and that's recycling of waste. In terms of street trading, Ludlow have got delegated authority to manage their own street trading. They've had delegated authority for many years and manage it extremely well. Any queries or questions that we get was directed directly to the town council for Ludlow, because they are responsible and have taken that responsibility for all of the street trading in Ludlow. So if we do get any queries, then it's direct to the Ludlow Town Council. And I'm not actually aware of any particular areas at the moment that are causing real concern, because
no, it was your problems I was more worried about. That maybe it would help Ludlow if anything came up the same.
I think in terms of street trading, it's not. Street trading in general, in its standard term, is not really a problem. If you're looking at a burger van on the side of the road, they have to have permission from the Highways Department, whether that's our highways or Highways England, to use the space. That's checked out. There's some checks that we do on the actual applicants and things like that. And as long as they're trading within the guidance, they're absolutely fine. The only thing that was raised last year was specifically about specialist events and we mentioned the Christmas markets before, and it was highlighted that you know, some town councils were having 20, 30 stalls, whatever it is, even more than that in some cases, attending these Christmas events, and actually it was captured by street trading insofar as the events were being held on the highway, and the roads were being closed. And I think when the original consultation was sent out and all of this was consulted on to do with the use of the highway and anywhere where the public has access to, I don't think the town councils sort of realised at that point in time that actually the Christmas markets would be captured within that street trading regime, because I think, you know, from my perspective, the conversations that I've had, they thought it was its separate entity as a market, and it's not a market under market rights in the majority of town councils. It is a specific Christmas, they call it a Christmas market or Christmas fair, but it's actually street trading. It's not a market under traditional market rights, and therefore it's captured by street trading rather than under the market charter.
Yeah.
Does that help?
Just follow up, just check. If I have a problem with skip hire place at the back of me, do I ring you, or could you give me a number, please?
Yeah, if you just email me, Councillor Parry, with your concerns, and I'll make sure it's the right team that gets hold of your query. Is that all right?
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mandy. Councillor Tremellian, I've got your question. I'm not going to answer that. We'll just leave it on record. Councillor Jones, you're asked to speak.
Yeah, thank you. I was just going to move the recommendations on the report recommendation 21225.
Okay, thanks for that. But prior to doing that, Pam Mosley, you want to speak?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Pam Mosley speaking here. A couple of queries really. One is that in the report, page 11, paragraph 5.2, it speaks about caravan sites licensing, that we are able to charge fees for licensing residential caravan sites, but the council has not yet adopted a policy, so there are no fees in the proposals. So firstly, I'm wondering, you know, why that is, and would it bring a lot of money? And I don't know how many residential caravan sites we do have in Shropshire, but why we're not able to do this, because clearly with the financial situation, if it's money we could be receiving into the coffers, it would be good. And the other one is basically about the cost of the licensing service overall. In paragraph 4.1, it gives a differential between the income we receive and the amount we're able to, the magic cost to provide the service and the income received, with a deficit of 134,000 odd. I mean, clearly that's an awful lot of money, but we have to do these services. What, you know, how can this really continue with, as it's been stated, a lot of the businesses that we're concerned with are affected by the pandemic, and possibly, I mean, there'll be less revenue coming in. I'm just looking at the overall situation and how we think this might pan out in the future. Thank you.
Mandy Beaver, would you like to answer those queries?
I'll try. Okay. So the caravan site one, we absolutely know there's a niche there where some additional funding can come into the local authority. However, before that charging or any of that charging can be done, there's a massive project to be undertaken to identify all the ones that's captured under the Mobile Homes Act, all the traditional caravan sites that are out there across the county. If you think 1960 was the first piece of legislation that came in to do with caravan sites, and these could be sites where they've got 2 or 3 vans on there, and you know, they've been on there for many years, and they're in the middle of nowhere, and they've not bothered anybody, and it's been the same residents that's had the sites on there within families for many years. And you know, over the years, information, paperwork has just gone awry, and you know, we don't know, and I'm holding my hands up here, we don't know exactly every single site across the county. So there is a mammoth project to first of all identify all of those. If I can just say, things like the caravan club sites are not included, they're exempt from all of this. And the Mobile Homes Act brought in residential sites, so things like we're not talking gypsy sites here or traveller sites, we're talking mobile homes where people go to retire, or somebody has a static caravan on there and they pay ground rent for the static caravan, but they purchase the static caravan. And there is different requirements for the mobile homes and the static caravans on the residential site that there are to the touring sites. And more recently, what has come into this are things like yurts and glamping and pods and all of those new things, in addition to tents, which are actually sites that can be covered by this. So it's a mammoth project for the size of the county that we've got. And again, these will be, with the exception of the mobile homes, so your residential sites, where there is an annual maintenance fee potentially to be charged there, the rest are one-off fees. And all of those fees have to be consulted on widely with all of the sites. All of the conditions of licence have got to be consulted on when they're actually decided what the conditions are going to be. It's a huge, huge project. It's in the list of policies that are going to be taken forward. It's captured in there. Visiting officers, as they're going out and about at the moment, are, if they come across any when they're doing visits to anywhere else across the county, they're putting them on the list so we can capture those. But in terms of fees for the volume of work that it's going to take, I think the amount of administration and visits and inspections and everything else that's going to be incorporated will far outweigh the fees that we can charge anyway. So we won't be able to get cost neutral on this. Going forward, when all that's done, if any new ones come along, then yes, a charge will go into the against any deficits that are there. But in terms of the amount of the cost and administration resource that's going to be put into making this happen far outweighs any money that we're going to get back right now from it. So that's the first one. Does that answer your question, Councillor Weasley?
Yes, thank you. Just a quick follow-up. You said that obviously I can see it's a big project and that the revenue would gone and wouldn't go near the work involved. Are the fees for the caravan sites potentially, are they set, are they discretionary or statutory? Would we have any discretion over what we charged?
So yes, they are discretionary fees. With the exception of the Mobile Homes Act, yes, it's discretionary, but there's a consultation, separate consultation with those. So the residential sites, it's a slightly different charging regime for the mobile home sites, so that the residential sites, than it is for a traditional caravan site that's only open for, say, 11 months of the year. The different charging regimes for each one. But yes, we can look at the cost of that and do the charging, but it's a wide consultation that's got to be done on those fees, which will potentially create a massive amount of objections and representations. We're expecting it.
Okay, thank you.
And your second question to do with the deficit. We've thought long and hard this year about the deficit and increasing fees and putting more money back against the deficit figure that is there. And again, we're in a position where we've got to draw a balance between what additional funding that we can get in by putting additional fees to set in recovery of the deficit against the businesses that are out there struggling at the moment with the unknown quantity that we've got over specifically the rest of this financial year. And I know these are charging for fees for next year, but it's given the businesses an opportunity to get themselves back on their feet so that we can look, when it comes to this time next year, when we're setting the fees for the following financial year, we can look at actually that situation at that time. Just as a more generalised thing, licensing fees are charged in effectively over a 3-year period. That's the sort of basis we use, albeit I always provide the paperwork here from when we started the finite detail, and when sort of Francis and I came into post in sort of 2012, the more finite detail about actually the real picture of how much it costs to deliver this statutory service, and some of the things that we have to deliver because we're legally required to do so, but some of those things we can't actually charge for anyway, which I've listed in the report. But as an authority, we've got to do it. So there's always going to be costs associated to licensing that we're never going to recover. Because things like taxi licensing fees, any fees and deficits that are brought in or recuperated there can only be offset against the taxi licensing regime. It cannot be used to then offset, say, street trading or any of the other licenses. The law is really specific on how these fees can be used. And The Licensing Act fees, a lot of those are statutory, and that we've got a little bit more leeway on the Licensing Act fees, or licensing fees charged under the Licensing Act, and we can use that money to offset administration costs for licensing. So each sort of piece of legislation, each different type of license has a slightly different way that we can use the fees, or we can't use the fees, or how we can recover any deficits. And on the other end of the scale, if we have a surplus, and I'll use the taxi fees again, if we have a surplus, we have to use those surpluses to offset fees in the following year. So we can actually, they can go up and they can go down based on the incomes that we've got coming in. It is a really difficult piece of work to try and get a balance on, and the pandemic has just made it 10 times worse this year. And I feel like I'm hiding behind the pandemic, but I'm genuinely not. It's just that real consideration for the businesses out there. Is that helpful?
Yes.
Thank you, Mandy. Yes, certainly reading the report, I got a flavour of how difficult it is with all the different regimes and practices from the legislation. So well done for finding your way through it, really. Thank you.
Thank you, Mandy, for that explanation. Councillor Nigel Harting, you want to speak?
No, Chair, I was just I wanted to second the recommendations, Chair.
Chair.
Oh, okay, right. So we got Councillor Jones has proposed it.
Chair.
Sorry, who speak now?
Sorry, I can't get the chat to work on the computer. Sorry, I just wanted to ask a quick question, if that's all right, Chair.
Yeah, just introduce yourself and carry on.
It's Paul Milner. I was just going to ask about the fireworks legislation part of it that's in the report, and how that will affect people putting on their own fireworks display, or is it just for storage, or are these fees going to affect the clubs, or if you like, the voluntary sector who want to put on a firework display to raise money for charity? Would these fees affect them, or just those who are actually doing as a commercial business of providing fireworks?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Milner. So the fees that are associated with the storage and the sale of fireworks. So if you've got a commercial business that are doing the firework displays and are hired in to do a firework display on behalf of an organisation, they get associated fees. If it's say, for example, a retailer like Tesco's, who each November they have a stall in Tesco's where you can go and get your fireworks from. So Tesco's would have to pay the fireworks fees on those to do their sales for that month, 6 weeks of the year. But that's what it is. It's not charging a charity to do a display or anything like that. It's actually charging the suppliers and the people who store the fireworks themselves.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Right, we'll go back now then. We've had it proposed to accept the report from Councillor Jones. It's just been seconded by Councillor Harting. I will accept the recommendations as contained in the report unless anyone else indicates differently. Anybody else going to? So we're all happy to receive the report. And thank you, Mandy, for all your explanations. Yeah. We'll move on now then to number 6, which is request for change to Hackney Carriage fare card. And Mandy, baby, you're going to introduce and present this item.
Thank you, Chair. So just a teeny bit of background on this one. So as part of the consultations that we did on the 2019 to 2023 Hackney Carriage and private hire licensing policy, part of that work, alongside that work, was the consideration for the removal of the 5 existing Hackney Carriage zones across the county. So they were reflected of the old districts and borough councils to create one single zone for the whole of the administrative area of Shropshire Council. All of that has been consulted on, all of that has been agreed, and it's gone to council and all been agreed for that to happen. There was an extended period of time. The original proposal was that to come in from the 1st of April 2019. During the consultation, there was an extension put to that, and it was agreed that a transitional period to the 1st of April 2021 would be incorporated within that. So it's been formally agreed that on the 1st of April 2021 there will be one zone for Shropshire Council for all the Hackney carriages. What runs alongside that now is currently, up until the 31st of March 2021, we have 5 separate fare cards. And this report is just to let the committee or make the committee aware that we will be going out to consultation in the new year on a pricing regime for a single fare card for the single zone for the whole administrative area of Shropshire Council from the 1st of April 2021. This is the Hackney Carriage fees are these are fees that are charged by the drivers to members of the public, and this is the maximum fees that can be charged, but drivers can charge less than what's on the fare card with arrangement with their passenger, but they can't charge any more. So the meters that you will see in a Hackney Carriage are set to the fare card. But I need to go out to the trade initially to have a discussion with them about what fees that they want setting from the 1st of April 2021. I have done a very sort of light touch a consultation with the trade, and as you can see from the report, we only had a couple of responses. There wasn't really a theme there as such that we could sort of try and revamp the fare card as it is. So what I'm proposing is that we go out to consultation with the fare card as it stands. Currently just use one of the 5 and just because they're all got the same fees on them, and just go out to consultation on a formal basis early on in the new year with the view to bringing it back to strategic with if there's any objections, and if not, to come into force from the 1st of April 2021. So really this report is just to say that that's what's going to happen, that's what's going on, so that the committee is fully aware of what is happening if there are any queries going forward. But this is not part of the formal consultation. That will start in the new year when we go out to the trade for that consultation to commence. Okay.
Thank you, Mandy, for the report. I will now ask members of the committee for their comments. Please indicate on the chat function if you wish to speak, or if you can't use it, just shout. Please remember that when asked to speak, members should unmute their microphone, state their name and remute on completion. I've got Councillor Simon Jones.
Thank you, Councillor Simon Jones, and I wish to move that we note the recommendations on the report.
Thank you for that. And from the chair, I'll second that. So are there so is everybody happy with that? To accept the recommendations as contained in the report, unless anybody else indicates differently? No, so we're all happy then. Thank you, Mandy, for that. And we'll now move on to 7, exercise of delegated powers. Can Mandy Beaver introduce herself and present this item, please?
Thank you, Chair. This is the standard report that I bring to every committee that we have, and it just informs committee of all the work that's been going on during the period stated within the report, which for this particular one was the 1st of May 2020 to the 31st of August. And as you can imagine, that has been through the probably worst possible time for a licensing regime with what's been going on out there in the world. But the applications have been coming in through the door, and they've been being processed by officers. Adjustments have had to be made in terms of the way we do things, because we haven't been able to do the face-to-face appointments that we were doing. So there's a lot of work that the numbers on these pages don't actually capture in terms of the administration that's having to be going on, and the additional work that's having to be done in the background to make these applications be processed and actually be issued out there. And what this report doesn't reflect is the massive amount of queries that we've had as a service area to do with all the different legislation, and each time central government bring in a 4:30 piece of legislation on a Friday afternoon to come in from midnight, the volume of queries that the team have been getting have been phenomenal. So credit to the team. I would suggest that all of this work has been happening along with everything that's been going on, and still shows that they're keeping on control of the applications that's coming through the door, and they're being processed. Open to any questions?
Thank you, Mandy, for that report. And yes, from the chair, can I just thank all staff for their efforts that they made. It's just been so many questions, I should think. They've been absolutely inundated, but can can I express thanks to everybody involved in the licensing section. Right. Any questions? I've got nothing here, so I'll accept the recommendations as contained in the report unless anyone else indicates differently. I don't think it needs, I'll propose it. Can somebody quickly second it?
Councillor Palmer.
Well, Councillor Allcroft introduced himself, so he's the seconder. Thank you.
So did I.
Keith, you're muted.
I'm not now, sorry. That's I'm trying to read and use this at the same time. Future agenda items. Has anybody any comments? No? Right, we'll move on then to number 9, exclusion of press and public. I move that in accordance with the provisions of section 12A of the Local Government Act 1972 and paragraph 10.4 brackets 3 of the Council's access to information procedure rules, the public and press be excluded for the consideration of the remaining business.
Councillor Simon Jones, and I'll second that.
Thank you. So just wait. Just over to you, Tim.